Picture this. You walk into a bakery. You want bread, but you don't have any money. So you offer the baker a chicken. The problem is, the baker doesn't want a chicken today. He wants shoes. So now you have to find a shoemaker who happens to want a chicken, trade for shoes, walk back, and hope the baker hasn't sold out. This is the world we're told existed before money. A clumsy, frustrating world of trading stuff for stuff. There's just one problem with that story. It almost certainly never happened. For a long time, the history of money was told like a fairy tale. Once upon a time, people traded goods directly. Barter. Then, the story goes, they got tired of dragging chickens around, so somebody clever invented coins, and everyone lived happily ever after. This story is in textbooks. It's repeated everywhere. And anthropologists who actually went looking for these barter societies found something strange. They couldn't find them. There is no solid evidence of a large economy that ran purely on people swapping goods on the spot. The whole thing was mostly a guess, made famous by the economist Adam Smith, who imagined how things must have worked long ago. So if it wasn't barter, what was it? Let's go back about 5,000 years to Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers in what is now Iraq. This is one of the first places where people crowded together into real towns. And we have records from there, thousands of clay tablets. When you read them, you don't find people haggling over chickens. You find something that looks a lot more familiar. You find debt. Here's how it actually worked. Imagine you're a farmer in an ancient Mesopotamian village. You don't pay the brewer for your beer with a goat. You just get the beer. And someone writes down that you owe. At harvest time, you settle up. Your whole life runs on a web of little I owe us. You owe the brewer owes the temple owes the farmhands. Almost nobody is carrying around piles of silver to pay on the spot. They're keeping track. The economy ran on memory and trust, written down so nobody could conveniently forget. The temples and palaces were at the center of this. In a way, they worked like the first banks. They needed a way to measure all these debts, to write them in the same language. So they picked a standard unit. They called it the shekel. And here's a detail I love. The shekel started out as a specific weight of barley. Money, at its very beginning, was basically a measuring stick for who owed what to whom. It wasn't a shiny object you held. It was a number in a ledger. So now we have to ask the real question. If people were perfectly happy tracking debts with their neighbors, why did anyone ever invent actual coins? Little metal discs you can drop in a pouch. Think about who you can run a tab with. You can owe your neighbor because you'll see her tomorrow. You can owe the brewer in your village because everyone knows everyone, and if you skip out on your debt, the whole town will know you're a cheat. The system runs on the fact that you can't disappear. But what happens when you meet a stranger? Someone passing through? Someone from an enemy city? Someone you will never see again? You can't run a tab with a stranger. There's no trust, no shared memory, no reputation to protect. And there's one group of people who deal with strangers constantly, in huge numbers, who absolutely have to be paid right now, in something they can carry anywhere. Soldiers. This is where coins step onto the stage. The first standardized coins we know of appear around the 7th century before the Common Era, in a kingdom called Lydia, in what is today Western Turkey. And one of the big engines that spread coinage across the ancient world was paying soldiers. Think about it from a king's point of view. You've got an army, often made up of hired men, mercenaries, from all over. You can't pay them in promises. You can't pay them in barley they'd have to haul home. You need to hand each man a small, hard, standard chunk of value that he trusts, that anyone will accept, that he can spend the moment he reaches the next town. Coins were the perfect tool for paying people you have no relationship with. Money, in this physical form, was invented for the world of strangers. And once coins existed for soldiers and strangers, they spilled into everything. They were just too convenient. Now anyone could carry their wealth in their pocket and trade with anyone. No trust required, no records needed. The coin did the trusting for you. Now here's where it gets interesting, because this ancient story is still playing out in your wallet right now. We like to think we've come so far from clay tablets and barley, but look at how you actually pay for things today. When you tap a card or your phone, are you handing over a physical chunk of value? No, you're sending. We have looped all the way back around to ancient Mesopotamia. Most of the money in the world today isn't coins or bills at all. It's numbers in databases. It's debt and credit tracked by institutions that work like temples did, keeping the great ledger of who owes what. The shekel was a number in a ledger, and so is your bank balance. And the coin, that brilliant invention for dealing with strangers, is slowly fading out. We're going back to pure credit. Buy now, pay later. Tap to pay. Lines of credit. We trust the system to remember, so we don't have to carry the proof in our pockets anymore. The physical coin was a 5,000-year detour. The real heart of money was always the ledger. But the deepest part of this isn't about technology. It's about a problem that has never gone away and never will. The problem of trust between people who don't know each other. Every human society faces the same wall. Inside your circle, your family, your friends, your village, you don't need money. You help each other. You remember favors. You'd feel insulted if your mother handed you cash for dinner. Money would be strange and cold there because trust is already doing the job. Money only shows up at the edges where the trust runs out, where you meet the stranger. Money is the tool we invented to cooperate with people we have no reason to trust. That's its real magic. It lets a farmer in one country and a factory worker in another, who will never meet and never trust each other, work together as if they did. Every coin, every tap, every number on a screen is a tiny act of trust, outsourced to a system, so that millions of strangers can build a world together. So the next time someone tells you money is the root of all evil, you might gently disagree. Money is one of the most ingenious answers our species ever found to a very old, very human problem. How do you get strangers to help each other? 5,000 years ago, in the mud-brick towns between two rivers, we started writing down the answer, and we're still writing it today. If stories like this make you see the everyday world a little differently, you'll feel right at home here, so consider subscribing and sticking around for more. And I'm genuinely curious about one thing, so let me leave you with a question. If physical cash disappeared completely tomorrow and everything became numbers on a screen, do you think we'd gain something or lose something we can't quite name? Let me know what you think. I'll see you in the next one.